All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Sean. I'm from Arlington, Virginia, which is about 3 miles south of Washington, D.C. And I'll be talking about how life in Tajikistan is different than life in the States. So, obviously, Tajikistan, it's a country that not a lot of people know about or even think about. For me, it's thousands on thousands of miles away. So the question is, what can I expect when I'm over there for 6 whole weeks experiencing the culture and learning the language? So in the first couple of days, I noticed that there's a lot kind of different pace of life in Tajikistan. And my personal experience was for the first couple of days of the program, I was still technically in school because my school year runs very late. So I was used to getting assignments for classes, AP classes, IB, whatever, 2 letters you want to stick together. So when I landed in Tajikistan, I was used to the very rigorous sort of, at this time you'll do this, at this time you'll do that. And then I remember it was the first couple of days, and my host mom said we were going to go to the bazaar around, in the afternoon, 5, 6. So I thought to myself, okay, so I got all my stuff done for class, and I waited. And I waited for about 1.5 more days until finally around 8-ish, 2 days later, we finally went to the bazaar, and it was wasn't a bad thing by any means, but it was kind of eye-opening. And you kind of saw that everywhere you went, because it wasn't, all right, guys, we've got to be here by this date at this time. It was a lot more laid back, and it was kind of relaxing, because you can kind of take your time, people talk to you on the street. It's much more of kind of a communal culture where not everyone is rushing around to be in a certain place. So another huge part of life in Tajikistan is the cuisine. And on the left, we've got the photo of the largest and the world's only melon-shaped tea house. And Tajiks take their tea very seriously. It wouldn't be a regular day in my host family if I wasn't offered tea about 5 times. There's tons of different types of tea served just about everywhere. And on the top right, we have the sambusa, which I don't know how common it is, but it's kind of like a meat pocket. You've got meat inside of kind of a crusty bread filling. There's different ways to do them. You have the beef, and there's a vegetable one. And each family makes them a little bit different from the recipes passed down. So my sambusas that I had don't look like the ones in the image, and the ones that we made in class, which was a fun activity, they didn't look anything like that. So each family and each kind of, even just down to each person in Tajikistan has their own style. And on the bottom right, we have osh. Osh can almost be considered the national dish of Tajikistan. You could open up my host family's fridge. There'd be leftover containers of it. There was always an osh pot on the stove. We'd go to lunch. We'd always have osh. It's a great dish. It's rice, carrots, meat. They'll put in nuts or kind of raisins every now and then. It's another one of those family passed down traditional sort of culture meals. And another part about Tajikistan and its culture is the history. So, as I said, not a lot of people know many things about Tajikistan. So when I arrived, I had done my preliminary, Google research, but it was fun experiencing what was really there. So this right here is Hisor Fortress, and this was maybe half an hour outside Dushanbe, which is the capital city where we stayed. And this is actually where Genghis Khan ruled over all of Central Asia. So it was kind of neat that you could walk in and even on the fort and experience the history that was kind of surrounding you, and realizing that a legendary empire was ruled right from where you were standing. And the history story continues into the Soviet era. This was in an old Soviet hospital that was used during World War II to treat injured soldiers. And this is kind of a stained glass mural with the red flag and the horse. And these days it's used as a hotel. And we got a tour of the building. And it was kind of interesting seeing the history that's still present in Tajikistan from the Soviet and Russian era. And another shocking thing about this, or maybe not shocking, but surprising, was sort of the different view of the Soviet era of Russia over there. Because in the States, we've got movies, movies on movies on movies, where the Soviets, the Russians are portrayed as the bad guys. But in Tajikistan, the country wouldn't be where it is now unless it was for the Soviets, because a lot of the infrastructure and a lot of the development programs were created by the Soviet Union, and that really benefited the people. So it was interesting in getting that different perspective of history in Tajikistan that you couldn't get necessarily from America. And of course, the history continues to today. A big thing about Tajikistan these days is coming off of the civil war that they experienced and the years of Soviet rule. They're really trying to find the Tajik identity. So on the bottom kind of right is the And of course, right in the middle is the Tajik Flagpole, which was the world's largest flag. Now I think it's the world's second largest. But this is the landmark of central Dushanbe, and it's kind of the centerpiece of President Emomali Ramon's kind of Tajikification efforts, because with so many years gone by and with the Civil War, they're really coming together and trying to think to themselves, what's a Tajiki? So things like the giant melon tea house, the national dishes, the big flag, they're really trying to solidify the culture and kind of move on from maybe things that weren't so great in the past. So it's interesting watching the history from the ancient era, back from the Silk Road, to the Soviet era where many new things were built, and to the modern era where Tajikistan's coming on to its own. And I think they actually just celebrated their 25th anniversary as a nation on September 9th. So another thing about Tajikistan is you can talk to people. A lot of people ask, oh, is that a desert? I mean, people think it's in like basically right next to Saudi Arabia or something. But Tajikistan, it's an amazing looking country. This was a lake. We do a lake trip later in the program, which is amazing. There's lakes, mountains, hills, plains. So it's a definitely varied sort of country that you're not going to get bored looking the same thing for 6 weeks. And another thing is the pride for tradition in Tajikistan. And this has always been there, but especially with the recent efforts to kind of solidify, what is a Tajik or who is a Tajik, there's a huge amount of pride for tradition. This is a tea house that we went to, Navru's Palace, and these are the traditional designs on the ceilings and the walls, traditional Tajik designs, traditional Islamic designs, kind of just all combining into one. And again, with the tea, big part of the national identity. Tajikistan also is sort of a crossroads. Even back in the ancient era, back by Genghis Khan Ford, there was a Silk Road ran straight through Tajikistan. And these days, it's really interesting because you have a lot of influence from Russia, you have a lot of influence from China, tons of influence from Iran, kind of all converging in Tajikistan. This was a meeting room in the same Navru's Palace, and this was where a meeting between all those countries took place. And you can walk down the street. I mean, most Tajiks, at least in Dushanbe, they knew Russian pretty well, or even better than they knew Tajik. A lot of the trucks were Chinese. When we took the trip up into the Panjikent, into the mountains, tunnel was built by an Iranian contractor. So each one of these countries is kind of contributing to Tajikistan. So it's really interesting to watch how they interact and sort of build Tajikistan together. And finally, it's a different way of looking at everyday life. And this was in the Panjikent Bazaar. And, in the States, we go to the supermarket and we pick up whatever we need, we check out. In the Bazaar, it's a little bit different than that. So you have separate items everywhere, and for each item you have to negotiate. So this is where your Tajik skills were really put to the test, because if you couldn't negotiate, most sellers were honest, but every now and then, you might get the one who recognizes that, hey, this guy is speaking English to all his friends and doesn't know what's going on, so you're charged a couple extra simoni. And in the Bazaar, you're negotiating simoni by simoni, and even walk down the street, you talk to people in Tajiki. Your taxi drivers, as Jack was saying, you talk to them in Tajiki. The families, the whole interaction with the families. My host family was a little bit different. I had a stay-at-home mom, and my host sister, my host dad would go out to work. So that was all Tajiki there. And if you didn't know Tajiki, or you were just kind of there for the vacation or anything, you were going to have a hard time even experiencing or walking around Tajikistan, because it's not like, I know a couple people have been to Europe where a lot of people speak English, or you can get around just by using English. In Tajikistan, it's only Tajiki. In Dushanbe, a lot of people know Russian, but it's more Tajiki these days than Russian. And this was even better than practice in the class, because once you got out there, I knew my neighbors well. When I waited for the car, I would talk to people. So it was a great way to practice the language and become even more immersed in the culture. And that's about it for my part of the presentation. So if there's any questions, just stick them below in the chat box.